Right now at 10 o'clock, News4Jax is learning more about the 9 Duval County jail staff members who were stripped of their duties and their authority after the death of 31-year-old Charles Faggart, who was an inmate at the jail. It's been 1 week now since the incident at the Duval County Jail, which the sheriff's office says is still in its early stages of investigation.
Faggart was transported to a hospital with critical injuries last Monday. He died on Thursday. News4Jax reporter Eric Avanier joins us now live outside the jail with new details about some of the jail staff and the events leading up to Faggart being rushed to the hospital. Eric?
Yeah, we were able to obtain that because earlier today, JSO released the names of 8 corrections officers along with a sergeant who were all the targets of an investigation into Faggart's death. Now, 4 of those employees were previously targets of an internal affairs investigation. Also, JSO released the incident report. It is a heavily redacted incident report that has sparked some outrage from Faggart's attorney. Just one day after protesters stood outside JSO headquarters to demand justice for 31-year-old Charles Faggart, JSO released the names of 8 jail officers and a sergeant who were all relieved of their duties and authority. JSO says all 9 employees were involved in Faggart's death. News4Jax also obtained the jail employment history of all 9 employees. According to the history report, Sergeant W.H. Cox was reprimanded for violating the jail's response to resistance policy. He had also been either reprimanded or received counseling for failing to conform to work standards. Officer G.L. McGinnis and Officer Emmy Sullivan both received counseling after failing to conform to work standards. Officer E. Kurtovich had been reprimanded and ordered to undergo counseling for unbecoming conduct, sleeping on the job, insubordination, and incompetence. The other officers relieved of duty had no previous run-ins with internal affairs. JSO also released this heavily redacted incident report. It was so redacted that it drew criticism from Faggart's family attorney, Belkis Palata. She released a statement that says in part, while the sheriff may not consider this newly released report part of the official investigation, the family does. They have been begging for answers only to receive fragmented and selective information through media reports under the guise of transparency. It goes on to say, the sheriff has now released a report based entirely on the accounts of the very officers who, according to our sources, the sheriff himself has called to be criminally prosecuted. The fact that this is the narrative being presented to the public while the family continues to sit in the dark is devastating. Now, while the report is heavily redacted, it does state that shortly after 7 a.m. last Monday, Faggart became aggressive, erratic, and physically disruptive by thrashing his body, clenching his fist, pushing and pulling as he was being escorted to a dorm. Sergeant Cox deemed Faggart to be a threat to himself and others, so he ordered Faggart to be restrained in a safety chair. News4Jax crime and safety analyst Tom Hackney says the safety chairs are used on troublesome inmates.
And it's a good method that they can monitor them. They can't hurt themselves. They can't hurt anybody else. It's literally like just a little short towards the ground roll-around chair where your arms and legs, chest are all restrained.
At some point, Faggart was removed from the chair and something happened to him. The report says that 2 hours after Faggart was aggressive, JFRD arrived at the jail to take him to the hospital in critical condition. Days later, he died in the hospital from what JSO described as a brain death. Now, JSO asked the FBI to assist in this investigation, and until this investigation is complete, neither agency is commenting on what happened. Reporting live from outside the Duval County Jail, Eric Avanier, Channel 4, the local station.